The path of spirituality is a path that we are all on, but we often start that path differently, depending on our upbringing, our culture. We really take this journey from different perspectives, different realities, but we really aim to get to the same destination, which is fulfillment, which is happiness, which is really understanding your connection with that which we call God. Now, for me, I started out as a Christian, but it has led me through a journey of recognizing what truly is spirituality. And now I'm going to share with you my journey and why I am no longer Christian. My name is Peter Abundant, aka Dr. Abundant. I have a PhD, and I'm also an ordained minister of metaphysical sciences, which is ultimately the study of spirituality. I'm also the author of The Enlightened Shadow and Spiritual, Not Religious. Now, for me, growing up, typical family, we identified as Christian, but though I didn't go to church regularly every single week, we did go to church on a regular basis when it came to holidays, right, or special events. Now, though Christianity was and still is within my family, a big part of our identity, it is something that I took for granted, just like many of us, because when you are naturally born into something, you just kind of assume it as normal and something that's just regular with everybody. Even though as you continue to grow up, you start to understand that there are differences. For me, it was a simple thing of, okay, we went to church. Whenever we had special events, we would go to church. Whenever we had special gatherings and dinner, we would say grace. We would say a prayer. We ended off with, in Jesus' name, amen. But within me, though, there was something that was intrigued. There was a curiosity. And I always wondered, okay, what of the other religions? This thing we call God, what is it really? And how do I connect deeper with it? Well, majority of my family, we were all Christian, but there were some outsiders, which were actually Muslim. My aunt, she was a Muslim. And of course, my cousins, by way of her, are all Muslim. And so as I got into my later, childhood years and teenage years, I interacted more with that side of my family and those Muslims, and really was intrigued because it was something that was so different, so interesting, right? And it seemed like they were a little bit more invested. They were a little bit more committed. Okay. Now that was also interesting because why were they more committed than me, myself, what I've seen in my family, and even sometimes what I've seen in other Christians when I would go to other friends' church events and gatherings and things of that nature. And so that really was kind of part of the catalyst that sparked my interest into exploring other things, because to me, it seemed like sticking with what was given to me, what was programmed within me by way of my parents, which is natural, right? As parents, you want to provide the education that you think works for you to your children, so that way they can take it and take it to another level and be successful and happy in their lives. The problem with that, though, is it's the assumption that they will in fact that they will in fact resonate, right? That they would in fact take what you have provided for them and that it actually works for them, right? Well, doesn't always work. So anyway, for me, it was an interesting curiosity that was there when I was very young, but I didn't really take it too seriously. But when I look back on it, I can recognize that it was something that was pretty significant, because most people take it for granted. Even if they think about somebody else's religion, they just say, oh, okay, that's your belief system. Great. Good luck. Good for you, right? I am this because this is what I was raised as. Later on, throughout my teenage years, I was more curious about God, curious about things, the world, right? The universe, my existence. And what I understood, what eventually dawned on me, is that, hey, I can actually go out and learn about all these things. I can follow this curiosity that I had. And I recognized that the curiosity is what made me different. The understanding that there are different paths to take, and that if there are different paths to take, well, maybe the path that I'm on could be wrong, right? That was one way. And that was a very, very limited view or perspective as to the possibilities, right? But still, this idea that maybe I'm on the wrong path and I should actually investigate other paths and make a decision based on what I know is right for me, rather than assuming this path that was given to me, that was told to me was the right path. And as long as I felt like, hey, if there's no danger in learning, then it would be okay. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to take it upon myself to actually learn more about different religions. Okay. And at this time, again, I was a teenager and I was very curious, and I communicated this with my mom, and she later came to me with some, information on options and opportunities. And she told me, she said, hey, there's a Muslim school in New York. And at the time I lived in New York, we lived in New York. And she said, hey, you can actually go to this school if you want. If you're curious, you can learn about it, learn about the religion, learn about the culture, and you can also get your education. And I say, of course, let me check it out, right? It's still in Queens. It was still at home. Okay, let me take it out. Let me check it out. It was better than just simply going to public school, right? Because public school, they're not teaching you any of that. They're not teaching you culture. So let me go and check it out. So I did so. And I was in love. Now, not particularly with the religion, but I was in love with learning about the religion, learning about the culture, learning about the people of different ethnic backgrounds, right? All collecting in this space with a single-minded goal and purpose of taking this particular path from this particular book, the Quran, and taking this journey together to connect with God, to be good Muslims, right? It was so fascinating and interesting to me, and I met amazing people and made some good friends. But I was still curious and I wanted to learn more. So I attended that school for a year, and then my mother came to me with another opportunity, right? Another school to go to. This school, though, was away, right? We lived in New York at the time. This school was in New Jersey. This school was called Garden State Academy. It is no longer around now. I think the buildings and everything still remain, but the school itself is not functional. Like, it's not a school you can attend. But it was an amazing experience because, one, I was excited because this school was away, meaning we stayed in dorms. Okay. And then we came home once a month, spend the weekend with our family, and then we went back to school. It was more like it replicated to me college, right? And I wanted to go to college. So I was like, well, let me check this out. It will prepare me to not be homesick. I will be around many people, many different upbringings and cultures, and I would have this experience. And this school was a Seventh-day Adventist school, which is a Christian school, but it's Seventh-day Adventist. And the difference between traditional Christians and Seventh-day Adventist Christians is, the big difference really is that they recognize Saturday as the day of worship, the day to go to church, whereas traditional Christians recognize it as Sunday. And by the way, Islam recognizes it as Friday. So I was fascinated, and I said, cool, let me go check it out. And I did. I attended this school for 2 years. I even converted to be a Seventh-day Adventist. The thing was, though, is that I recognized much later on is the reason why I got converted is because it was more familiar, right? Because remember, I was brought up as a Christian. So it was more familiar to identify, Jesus as your Lord and Savior, and all the stories of Jesus, and, the King James Version of the Bible and all those things. And so when placed in front of the Bible and shown, okay, this is, you see, it says the seventh day. When you look at the calendar, Saturday is on the seventh day. Now, back in those days, pretty much all the calendars read that way, where Sunday was the first day and Saturday was the seventh. Nowadays, you can find different calendars that say different things. But to me, when they laid down the evidence and pointed it out within the Bible, I'm like, oh, this makes sense. Oh, this is comfortable. This is familiar, right? This is the path. And so I took that path. I stepped on that path. I walked that path a little bit, and I got a lot from it, right? A big part of my healthy lifestyle came from that. If you don't know, the Seventh-day Adventists, they're some of the longest living people on the planet, right? When you get into the blue zones, they represent all around the world. These blue zones are basically places around the world where people live the longest. And one of those blue zones is a place in California where they are Seventh-day Adventists and they follow the Seventh-day Adventist principles. One of those big principles is a plant-based, vegetarian, vegan diet. And so I assumed that diet and recognized the benefits of that diet and love the diet. Like that's my big part of my life, is really eating plant-based, eating whole plant-based foods, minimally processed. And that has been a big part of my health journey. And so converted Seventh-day Adventist in high school, went on to a Seventh-day Adventist college. Now, at that point, Seventh-day Adventist in college, it was interesting because there was something that shifted where I did not feel like that urge within me was being fulfilled. I didn't feel a deep spiritual connection with God, with the universe, with myself. And so, though, even in that time frame, you can say, okay, yeah, that's just you being in college and you going through that adjustment of adulthood and having a really transformative and impactful year, of college. That can be tough. And that can, people deal with a lot of change and transformation during that time, and a lot of questioning and self-doubt even, because, you're really just going through life and following the format, following the structure, the ideas that your parents instill, like go to college, get a good job, so you're just following along. But at that time, you're also experiencing a sense of your true identity emerging. And so it was clear to me that something wasn't right. And so I left college, okay, came back home to New York, and really took some time to really think about myself, what I want out of life. And Christianity wasn't a big part of that, okay? I was still curious and wanted to learn more about other things, because as far as I was concerned, how can one person be given one option, one thing, and decide that that is going to fulfill them for the rest of their life? And so for me, I knew that I had to explore a multitude of ideas and concepts and religions and beliefs, so that way I can come into my own understanding as what truly resonates with me and how I want to take this journey of connecting with God, connecting with myself, connecting with the universe. And so I continued on this journey, right? I learned many religions, Buddhism, Baha'ism. And the fascinating thing is, it wasn't about really looking at Christianity as a bad religion, right? Even though many people have that understanding, that belief that Christianity is, it's a lie. It's all used to control and manipulate people. Now, yes, we can look at history and we can connect very heinous acts to many religions, especially Christianity. But the reality is, it wasn't the religion. It was how people used the religion. But so I still knew and understood that Christianity wasn't for me because, one, it really didn't satisfy, or it didn't really connect the dots in the way that I understood and saw things. For example, even as a child, when people would talk about particular stories of the Bible, I in a very fascinating way, looked at them differently than how other people looked at them. For example, when people say, or even in the Bible, when it said that Jesus was the Son of God, it always made sense to me that he wasn't the only child of God. If Jesus, this man, was a child of God, then aren't I a child of God? Aren't you a child of God? Aren't every one of us a child of God? Okay. So then that continued on, because then it went into, okay, Jesus was able to create these miracles as the Son, as a child of God. Well, then if we are all the child of God, then we should all be able to do this, right? And even in the Bible, Jesus states that, right? That we're all capable. We're all children of God. So I found that fascinating. But everybody else, mind you, did not. In the Christian community, they put Jesus as the single one. They put him on such a pedestal high above themselves that they could not see that Jesus was a example, and he preached that. Okay. Now, other stories like Jesus walking on water. Now, I always felt that was interesting, and I always saw that differently than everybody else, because everybody else saw that literally. They saw the Bible, everything in the Bible, as literal historical events. But for me, when people told or would state that and talk about that story, what I saw was a story of a man who saw his path so clearly that he was able to walk it with confidence, right? Now, later on, I got into metaphysics and understanding the symbolics and symbology and things of that nature. And I understand now on a deeper level what it means for a lot of people with Jesus walking on the water, and the water was, tumultuous and things of that nature. And water represents the subconscious mind. It also represents emotions, things of that nature. But that's another journey, and that's really for another topic altogether. But I already saw that these stories in the Bible, amazing stories, extremely powerful stories, were stories about oneself, the reader, okay? And each character in the Bible represents an aspect of yourself. Now, some people debate whether Jesus existed, whether he didn't exist. Some people debate, is the Bible real? I don't get involved in either side of that debate because it doesn't matter. The truth is, the insight, the information, the wisdom is truth. Just like in the Quran, just like in any other spiritual book that you read, any spiritual text, any experience that you have, it essentially comes down to you. It is all about you. It starts and ends with you, right? I am the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. The I am is your consciousness. That is the part of you that is the divine, the part of you that God, the Creator, has created. So when we get into the Bible, understand that the Bible is a reflection of the self. Now, why am I no longer Christian? Because the message, the story, the objective isn't to be Christian. The objective is to be Christ-like. And that doesn't just only pertain to those who are simply reading the Bible. You don't get that only from reading the Bible. You get that from reading all the spiritual texts. You get that not even from just reading spiritual texts. You get that by recognizing the divine within you, spending time with yourself, being yourself, right? Understanding yourself, understanding your life, understanding that your mind, your body, your consciousness is a powerful creator of all that you experience. So, in other words, this isn't about bashing Christianity. This is about understanding that Christianity is just simply a byproduct of people recognizing the wisdom in the Bible and identifying with it to such a point where they want to call themselves Christian. There's nothing wrong with that. But understand, calling yourself Christian doesn't make you Christ-like. So for me, it is not about giving myself a label, okay? Because I don't just simply recognize the Bible as the only amazing and powerful spiritual religious text. I recognized many of them. In fact, I'm at a point where anything I read is a sacred spiritual religious text. All right? Because there is deeper wisdom in everything that you experience. Now, you have to recognize that if you are somebody who is dealing with a little bit of turmoil or confusion about Christianity, if you are Christian, what I want you to understand is it's okay. Trust in that. Trust in the part of you that is being pulled to something else. Okay. It is not going to damn you to hell. Okay. Or create unhappiness and misery in your life. It is going to actually pull you closer to the heaven you wish to create right now. It is actually going to manifest in you actually connecting deeper with yourself and God. That pull that you feel, that angst, that unfulfillment, right? That desire for fulfillment, the direction that you are feeling you should be going, that is God. That is the divine within you guiding you to the light. So don't be discouraged. Recognize that the journey isn't to be Christian, right? The journey is to be Christ-like. The journey is to be enlightened. The journey is to embrace who you truly are and understand your truth. Okay? We all have a different truth because we are all different. I am an individual. You are an individual. Yeah, the ego has a little bit to play in that. And the ego, we know, is not the best in reputation, but it has its purpose. Your consciousness, though, is still unique and special. Okay, it is an individualized spark called you. So when you recognize, okay, this is something that you should follow, do it with grace, do it with a sense of recognizing that you don't have to feel guilt or shame, but you are being pulled by a urgency to truly connect with God on a deeper level. Now, what I want you to truly understand, though, is say you resonate with something like the Bible, or you resonate with Christianity as a form of language or communication, right? There are plenty of, right, spiritual communities, churches that have the same language of Christianity, but are more open, meaning that they don't speak or have a belief system that is rooted in restrictions and, if you don't do this, you're going to hell, but are more supportive and nurturing to the individual spiritual journey, coming from a place of love, compassion, and empathy, rather than a place of fear, hate, right? So you have to understand that there are places for you to go, even when you are on this journey of really questioning and being curious about other things. When you follow that, because it has led me to this realization as well, is that once I stepped away from Christianity as my quote unquote religion or path of choice or enlightenment or happiness or heaven, I took a break from reading the Bible. And then I took my journey, and over years and years and years, eventually it was a full circle moment because I eventually came back to reading the Bible again. Now, with all of the insight and information that I have, I read the Bible from a very different lens and perspective. And how I read the Bible now is way more fulfilling, way more powerful, way more engaging, because I am not now reading the Bible looking at people, shaming individuals or characters in the Bible, judging them and saying, oh, they were stupid. Oh, they did a bad thing. I'm recognizing that each person in the Bible is a representation of myself. Just like in a dream, when you have a dream and you dream about all these different people and characters, those people are not actually in your dream, right? They are a reflection, an expression of your idea of them in the dream. So essentially, that is you in the dream playing the part of them, showing you aspects of yourself that you weren't aware of, right? That are in your subconscious mind. The Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, right? The Karma Sutra, the Book of the Dead, all of those books are doing the same thing. They are reflections of yourself, showing you and giving you stories, allegories that help you to recognize the power, how amazing and how beautiful you are within you. It is guidance. It is stories to guide you to awakening, to enlightenment, to self-realization. So when you read these amazing books of wisdom, understand that's what it's about. Remember and consider that in the past, information was passed down orally for the most part. Okay. Now, they were also passed down in the way of stories with wisdom hidden within it to reveal themselves when you mature to that level. Okay. As a child, you just think these are basic characters. But as an adult, if you were told that story over and over and over again, then you recognize maybe when you tell your children that story, wait a minute, this story actually means something else. Okay. That is essentially what the Bible is. There are stories collected together to bring out an inner wisdom when you are wise enough to actually hear it, see it, and feel it. So understand, though I am not advocating for or against Christianity, what I want you to understand is this is my story. This is why I am no longer Christian. Because to me, Christianity is not just a book. It's not just a label or a religion. Okay. It is truly not about recognizing, okay, I am this, I am that. It's about just simply recognizing that I am. Okay. So it's not about saying I am Christian, I am Muslim, I am this, I am that. It is just simply about recognizing the I am. That is you. That is consciousness. That is the divine spark. That is you. It's expressing itself outward. That is the mission. That is the objective. When you tap into that, you essentially understand and tap into fulfillment, joy, and really access your power to create anything that you desire to create. Anything you desire to create. So that is my story. Okay. And I want you to take that and understand that it has led me to a place of recognizing that all the spiritual paths essentially lead us to the same place. And all the spiritual paths have something to contribute to your happiness and to your joy. All right. So it's not about needing to pick one or the other, because we see through history that creates a separation, right? It creates a lot of war, a lot of animosity, a lot of hate, right? Because they have these, there's so many stories in these books, and people will take one verse and make a whole entire narrative based on what they want you to believe, right? Which is how religion has been used to manipulate and really cause a lot of harm in the world. When in fact, these books this wisdom is really designed to bring about beauty, love, and happiness. So thank you so much for listening, joining me. Feel free to go to drabundant.com, sign up for my newsletter, and get access to this free ebook, The Power Within, and so much more. Continue to join me on this journey. Peace and abundance always.